Well, hello, everyone. It's time for another Thursdage, which no doubt you know is all about games powered by the Adventure Game Engine. Thursdage, you get it? That was a name coined by our beloved Owen Casey Stevens. And let me see what's going on in chat. Can you hear me, friends? Muzak is early, he says 3 minutes after. Quiet, you devious. I put the stream on TV so Troy's mistiness is actual size. Nice. Well, I'm glad you like that. It should be very fun for you. Hey, Michael. Yeah, we decided Michael is saying he wasn't sure if we were going to have a show for the holiday, for the long holiday weekend perhaps, but we are. And we're also, just so everyone's aware, we're going to be doing office hours too. But today on the show, we're going to get into the fundamentals of TTRPG development. Now, here's the deal. What this is really, you know how there are advice shows where you call in and people give you all kinds of advice? This is the opposite, wherein I need the advice and people, you tell me what you know about game development. And that's why for this program, we have commandeered, we've collected, we've recruited our good friend Reyn LeBeau. How are you, buddy?
Hello, everybody. So far, so good. Hanging in there.
Yes, as we all are. And I was looking so forward to this show. I always enjoy when you hang out with us. Now, you are a prolific third-party publisher.
A bit of a downturn right now, but I feel like I've got a good cause for that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because you're in the midst of preparing for family and
Perhaps the most important homebrew I will ever do.
Right. Exactly. And let's see. I didn't know if that was. I got high. Oh, never mind. I was gonna. I've got to do this thing where I read the comment before I say the comment. Just in case.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Before we get into it, now, so we've had you on many times, more times than I can count, on my phalanges. But for me, the way that you approach development and design is so approachable and understandable. It's rooted in pragmatism, but very much as a platform for expressing creativity and really going for it. As example, as evidenced by our, this all started because we were going to make a dungeon. That was it. We're going to make a kaiju experience, and it developed into. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But in a very fun way, it kind of developed into something bigger. And so, right now we're kind of, is it a map? Is it an encounter? Is it a whole new world? That's kind of where we're at. And I wanted to pause that process and say, all of that's beautiful. Those three different ideas, important. But let's get into the fundamentals. And so we'll do that. But first, I want to highlight some new stuff that has been published through the Age Creators Alliance, which is our content program, and by none other than our own GM Jonesy. He's got two titles. This one is Weird Locations Roadside Motel for Cthulhu Awakens. And basically you can utilize this for your ongoing Cthulhu Awakens or Modern Age campaign. And it's a roadside motel. It gives you a little history so you can know what you're talking about. Got stats for 5 improvised weapons. I'm trying to imagine what those might be. Coffee maker, iron, stale candy bar, bed bugs, something like that. Motel staff NPCs.
Eldritch bed bugs.
What's that?
Eldritch bed bugs.
Eldritch bed bugs. Exactly.
Bed bugs in the mattress of the cosmos.
That is deep and itchy.
Very itchy.
Yeah, very itchy. And
cosmically itchy, even.
Cosmically itchy. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine what a cosmic itch might feel like. I don't know.
I'm done thinking about this,
I
actually.
am done. I am as well. I am as well. So why don't we do this? We will talk about this. Last bus leaving Arkham.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and so this is another Jonesy's newly published to the Age Creators Alliance for the Cthulhu Awakens line, and it is so it's Last Bus Leaving Arkham is set in the 2020s and suitable for first level characters from any walk of life. Characters
I've
just
taken a
need
look at it.
yeah,
Very
you like
nice.
it? Nice,
I like it.
excellent. Fantastic. Last Bus Leaving Arkham can be used as the catalyst event that brings together the player characters. I love it. Adventure background, you got some scene breakdown, NPC descriptions, and a nice condensed format. Requires the Cthulhu Awakens rulebook from us, you know. And let me drop these links in. My soul itches. Mine too. Um, but thank you, Jonesy, for bringing this to my attention. And everybody, you go buy this. You go buy both of these, and
Yeah,
then
go grab it.
yeah, and then when you're done, you know, head on over here and you give it a good review. Give it all the stars and share how much you love it, and then we'll you know have we'll see. Let's make the first Age Creators Alliance millionaire.
Hey,
Just a
ooh,
million of you would
good
go
luck.
under. Yeah, good luck.
Get
Good luck,
him.
Josie.
Go get him.
Yeah, Josie, keep us posted on your bank account. Um, and now let us have a dialogue. So,
Okay.
so when you are, how do you? I know that it's almost kind of silly to ask, how do you start? But
Ooh,
I'm imagining there is some element of familiarity or a way to kind of get into the zone. For you, what is it that gets you started on the road to creating in the TTRPG space?
man. This process is very much different for everybody, I think.
Hmm.
A lot they like I mean, I'm sure folks will share some stuff and maybe some folks will be able to pick up what I'm putting down. But
Sure, sure.
um what really some of the things that really get me started are something that need to be practicing a bit more is to read and to watch and to listen to what other folks are already making. Um, yeah, you get inspiration from it. You see what other folks have been making, and you see how they do it. And um, I'm I am one of those GMs that is every piece of media I'm looking at. Right in the back of my mind, there's this little creature who's writing down on this tablet. This is like, how could I get this into a game?
Right, right,
Should I get it into a game?
right.
Maybe not.
Well, so that's a good question. So, you know, do you agonize a lot about all of this takes so much time. Um,
Mhm.
if you really want to, you know, I'd imagine two people get into this and they kind of play around a little bit and they don't, you know, they just kind of work in the muscle, that creative, you know, development muscle, and which is located, I think, right at the base of your skull. And
Somewhere around here.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so you know, so is it so I'm like you as well. Like I always, especially when you have TTRPG brain, you always kind of think about how can you package this in a way, and you know, for me, for my journey in development and all of that, it's a natural progression. I think it's a natural progression for anybody who's really committed and into the hobby. They will find themselves, you know, I've said this before, the whole
Mhm.
notion of creator versus player, or you know, sort of consumer, is really
Mhm.
blurry, especially in the TTRPG space. And so, you know,
Gotcha.
yeah, and talking about how people are inspired is one way to do that. And I love the notion of like reading and kind of and exposing yourself to media. I don't always get the opportunity to do that as much as I want. Um,
Mhm.
so so let's say you've been inspired something. You know, this is I saw a great comment from David. Um, Here it is.
Got his four-step program down there.
An annoying idea crawls into
Ah,
the
Stevie's.
brain that will not leave me alone. Because 'cause I've had that before too, where you just can't
That happens.
yeah, you got that creative idea, you just feel like it'll work, and you can't stop thinking about it.
It's those
Um,
cosmic bed bugs.
that's right. You gotta get
They
it yeah,
carry knowledge.
You get a bad case of the cosmic bed bugs. Blah. And okay, so with that being said, you got the inspiration. Let's talk about what you got on the Age Creators Alliance and how that began, and we can
Okay,
kind of from there.
sure. Let's
Tell me
see.
all about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so far I've got what I think 5 adventures and 3 setting books. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Uh, and let's see, goodness, the meat and potatoes one is definitely I think it's just called the Visitor's Guide Destinations.
I'm pulling
I
that up.
did I had like a cute little thing I was gonna do that I might continue trying to do where I was going to make one very large setting book, but it ended up being incredibly cumbersome. Um,
Yeah.
so I was gonna break it up into 4 pieces, and a lot of those 4 pieces are then breaking into smaller pieces so that I actually release something. Um, 'Cause that Destinations book did take me about a year of coming back to the computer every couple of days to just write a couple hundred words, maybe even a couple thousand if I was really into it. Um, and that whole process, I wanted to that one for me was, partially about, um, doing research, and, going out and reading and, going out and watching. I listen to a lot of, history YouTube.
Mm,
Um, I listen to a lot of, history podcasts. I tried to get a lot of inspiration for, various mythologies and, stories from around the world, and, um, right now it's mostly just a big book of ideas that, is supposed to help me sort of lay my foundation, and
right.
I might come back to that book. I've got some errata in mind already for some things that I've noticed, and I did write it several years ago, so I might end up doing that thing where I go read through it again. I'm like, ugh, did I really
Right.
write this? What
Well,
is this? What was I
okay,
thinking?
that's interesting because naturally the first thing that you do is going to be a lot about the journey that you take to kind of learn all of that stuff. When
Mhm.
you how how is your revisit when you go back to stuff that you've created? Do you look at it and go, "Oh, I got to change it," or is that the more common experience, or is it a little different?
I do have a couple of adventures and setting books that when I come back to, I actually, I feel pretty good. I look at it and I read it and I think to myself, did somebody else write this? That couldn't have been me.
Right? Yes, I love that phenomenon. By the way,
Sometimes I hit myself with that, and that feels good.
yeah, it does. Yeah. And so what do you think inspires the look? What I'm trying to do right now is get your
Mhm.
stuff up on screen so people can see it. But
I had a feeling that there was a struggle behind me. That's
yeah,
all right. I can
there's
keep
some,
vamping if you need me to.
well, I mean, we're kind of talking about the meat and potatoes of it all. The
Mhm.
idea that this is the journey of creativity is different for many people.
Oh, yeah.
Hearing how it very specifically played out for you with Fateh Adventures, I think is for me, a masterclass, and then we'll kind of look at
Oh,
Chad
well.
as well. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, talk to me about that. You know, what is next for this? Like, what do you see
Mm.
happening now that you've got this up and published? I'm imagining there's unlimited sort of ways that you could go.
I've got plans. Um, Although I don't really have I've got maybe like a spare moment here and there, but, at least with my creative process, once I start getting into making something, um, I sometimes describe it that I'm like one of those old machine guns that's got the big, crank on it, that it takes a minute for it to really get going, but once I actually manage to, like, find the flow in the process, then I start hammering it out,
Okay,
and
so
at least that's what I try to go for
well,
is
and that's I think an important note. So as somebody, as a writer and as somebody who does some creative stuff, you got to go at your pace. You're creating, right? And you want to kind
Mhm,
of, to come. I have often have had a hard time comparing myself to people who are like just pumping out content, And
mhm.
I'm, but you've got to kind of do the thing as it comes to fruition. But how much of what you do is rooted in sort of discipline as it relates to, development principles and sort of the things that are a little
Mm,
more immutable, less
okay.
creative, but more of the kind of the scaffolding to hang the creativity on, if you get me.
Okay. Yes. Well, I think that perhaps the most obvious and most consequential question is, what exactly do you want to make?
Mm,
And it usually has to be something a bit more specific than I'd like to make a fantasy setting. Like, and then you start shaving down into the core of what kind of fantasy setting, what kind of vibe do you want to set? What kind of people do you want to put there? What kind of adventures do you want to have?
right.
What kind of art would you like to commission for it? And have it all start to come around. Like for me personally, at least for Vitaoth Adventures, hey, there they are. Um,
Are they showing up?
I think, yeah, I see them.
Why do
Um,
what? That's weird.
I see
Anyway,
them.
okay, good, good.
The core of Vitaoth, actually, for me personally, like one of the sort of mission statements I have for myself with it is that I want to make a world that people want to save.
Oh,
So I try to add a lot of color. I try to add a lot of diversity. I try to add a lot of fun, but I also try to, but and then I balance all that with a lot of very real evils uh, and some darkness and some selfishness that that you can choose to stand against, or that you can maybe if you got the right party for it, choose to take part in.
yeah,
Uh, for the individual groups that want to do that. But yeah, I wanted to make Vitaoth a place that people wanted to go and that they wanted to save. And so I take a lot of inspiration for this setting. I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of JRPGs I've played. Um, and
okay,
yeah, a lot of more colorful adventures that have got characters for whom, like, I really haven't gotten into a lot of the romantic fantasy stuff. I've got a handful of things that I really want to, so that I can get more Blue Rose, because I feel like Blue Rose also hits a lot of the things that I wanted to hit. It feels like a world that I'd want to save, at
right,
least
yeah,
the eldest part of it. And yeah, no, that's not true. I absolutely want to. I want to save Jarzen too. And maybe a little bit from itself.
right, exactly,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, and there's a lot of people in Kern who need some saving, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Blue Rose is a decent example because romantic fantasy is a pretty specific thing to go for. It is a very specific genre, and I think that finding that sort of focus is super important. Maybe if you really want to, you can also make sort of like a mission statement or keywords
yeah,
that sort of that you can keep coming back to. Um, if you're not quite sure where to go with it, you can, so maybe something that you could look back on and be like, "What did I come in here for?" Because
right,
when you're
right.
when you're 20,000 words in, it can get very easy to be lost in the sauce.
Right, right. So here's we've got a couple questions in chat that I want
Mhm.
to dive into. The first one, I believe, is David. Yeah, David Bullock is asking about any planning tools that you might use. Uh,
Ooh. Well, I'm a little boring with it. I mostly just use Google Docs, and
right. Yeah. Okay.
I put comments on it when I need to keep and um oh, thank you, Jonesy. Um, but I write down ideas, I share it with people, I cross stuff out when I've already used it. I look for things that I want to steal and include links to those things so that I can consult them later.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, got a lot of there's a lot of stuff from Pathfinder that I've been wanting to steal. Um, they got a lot of fun things in there, so
Yeah.
um, and I've been playing a lot of God of War lately, so now I'm real deep in the sauce on Norse mythology. Um,
Right. Right. You mentioned JRPGs.
mhm,
Are you you experience those through like JRPG video games?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I play a lot, so a lot of this. Actually, when I first started planning a lot of this, I even wrote down a lot of the stuff that I wanted specifically to inspire me for the setting. Um, and I definitely wrote down like a lot of. I'm a Final Fantasy girly. I'm a Kingdom Hearts. kind of person. I'm a
Yeah.
Tales, the Tales of series, like Tales of Symphonia, Tales of Vesperia. They've got a lot of, and then, a lot of campaigns that I've run have had those vibes just because it's what I engage with. So of course, it's what I've managed to find very easy to sort of make my own spin and then
Yeah.
return it to my players. Um, let's
I like
see.
that.
Yeah.
Then wanted to also let me see here. We've got a question.
Oh yes.
This is a great question. And I guess you and I, having talked about Vitath Adventures a lot, really didn't touch on the romantic fantasy aspect of it, but it's so clearly part of the charm of it all. Um,
Hmm.
Tempo asks, how is Vitath similar and different to Blue Rose?
Oh boy. I could fill up quite if I brought these things, got these all these documents up, I could fill a show with that.
Right.
Um, um, you know, I was really inspired when I by reading through the Blue Rose core rule books,
Yeah.
and through the City of the Blue Rose book, and I
Gorgeous
believe
book.
I
So
I own the
beautiful.
physical copy of Six of Swords, and I own Six of Cups that I'm still going through. I'm still kind of going through.
Yeah.
There, I mean, I can read out how the folks of how the professionals are doing it, and I can see what they're doing that works for me personally and what doesn't work for me personally, and
Yeah. Well, and I like that, and
yeah,
and and that and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the beautiful thing about TTRPGs is we all are borrowing and sharing and, sort of mixing of notions and ideas, and also, anything that's going on in the zeitgeist, and,
Mhm.
so one of the things that I'm curious about specific to your commitment, or you mentioned the player quite a bit, and it may seem to everyone just elementary. Of course, we're making this for players, but I,
Yes.
I will tell you that I have been exposed to some TTRPG elements that feel a little bit like I'm on a roller coaster that resides within the brain of the creator, and it's not really meant for me to experience it on the terms that I define or as I
Mm,
go through it, but it's meant for me to, like, a jump scare, and then, "No, we're going down, and
mm.
now we're going up, and we're going around," and, like, it
Oh,
feels a
dear.
little on rails. How do you as you go through your development process, do you take time? Do you just always sort of have a space, make space for whoever that player is, in your development, or do you stop and review? Are there checkpoints? Like, how do you do that?
Oh, goodness. Uh, let's see. Hmm. Sorry, there were a lot of parts in that question.
Yeah, sorry. I mean,
Where
yeah,
yeah,
let me
no,
just
they go, dude.
let me simplify
Uh,
it. Essentially, as you're developing, how do you how are you creating the space for the player that you don't know yet, but you know that they're going to be playing this or engaging with your content?
mhm.
How do you separate sort of I'll also illustrate with this experience that I had working in video
Okay.
games. I was talking with a developer, and it's my job here and back then to gather sentiment and to bring it forward and share, and at times you can find yourself in the situation where people are like, "Where did you hear that? What are you talking about?" Like they kind of get ready to shoot the messenger.
Mm.
And one of the developers said, unironically, video games would be so much fun if it weren't for the consumers. Like, just really frustrated, and
I
that is
mean,
there's a go for it.
I get it. I mean, I definitely get it, that feeling. I mean, I did a lot of I did a lot of retail business and a lot of customer service where, we would say the job wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for all the damn customers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and but
But
I but
yeah,
I think when you're in the business of creating a space where the person who will be experiencing it is the main character, even if they're not, you know what I mean? Like, it that they
mhm,
they will come into these spaces, video games, as the long lost, I don't know what you wanna say, like a, child of TTRPGs that's forgotten where it's come from.
Mhm.
It can be a little daunting to hold that space for the consumer, for the experience of the person who's going to be playing and running and kind of doing that. Um, and so I'm curious, as you're developing and as you're kind of working out these ideas, do you always just kind of think of it from the terms of how the player will experience it? Is that just a thing that's always on, or do you need to go back and check to make sure that you've got the right beat and the right sort of mix of, here's a surprise, now it's your turn, kind of thing?
I do gotta check in with myself occasionally, with that because a lot of it will be something that I thought was really cool to put in,
Yeah.
and, one of the chapters of my big Fantasy Age campaign, we had, the chapter was about, a Grand Prix that the heroes were supposed to take part in,
Okay.
and, so I had to make it so I came up with, not really a racing mechanic, but so much taking the chase rules and adjusting them
Ah,
so that they could be used to, maybe adjudicate a much larger race, um, and I had a great time with it, but once I got it on the table, I was rolling individually for every racer, and I thought it would make a very dynamic adventure, and I thought it did because then I was, like, providing commentary, like I was one of the commenters watching the racing.
yeah.
Players didn't they didn't find it quite as much fun because I was rolling for, 12 NPCs before I got to one of them.
Right.
Uh,
So they're kind of trapped in
so,
time in this race. That's interesting.
writing a book writing if you I was writing, like, novels, then, I can mostly write that for myself,
Yeah.
and with some understanding that, people will have to engage with it, so I'll have to, choose specific language or that I'll have to, um, you know, not make references that only I'm gonna get. Uh,
Right. Right.
and it's kind of the same with TTRPG content. This is the like, all these adventures that are on screen right now are meant to be played by people who aren't me. They're
Right.
probably going
That's
to
right.
have a wildly different experience than the one I intended because I ran all of these adventures for folks to test them, and, especially like that one right there, Greed's Resurrection Part 2, Gloria House with the dandy gentleman on the front there.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, that adventure changed quite a bit after I actually ran it for people, uh, because it's an infiltration adventure, and,
Ah,
the
right.
people who were play testing my adventure, were very no were not were like folks who were very enchanted with the idea that they did not have to fight everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so I wrote a lot of that adventure, having gone through a lot of Pathfinder, where a lot of first edition Pathfinder. God, I played that for so long. That where, like, the meat and potatoes of the game is fighting stuff. And uh, let's see. Train of thought. Come back to the station, please. Uh, but I wrote what I thought was cool, but I don't. I think I put down a particular vibe for the adventure, and then started writing a different kind of adventure, and the players through play sort of called me out on it. Not really like called me out at the table, like "How dare you," but more like at some point they were like, "I think this is that we're in over our heads here. We're not really built for combat. We're gonna leave and tell our superiors what's going on here." And, it threw me for a bit of a loop,
Right.
but then I wrote the adventure, but, they gave me that reality check that this adventure is, I get to write it, and I think it's really cool, but it's not for me, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
Uh, so
Interesting.
it
So
Yeah, yeah,
how
a lot
does
of
that?
that stuff can
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was to say that stuff can really come up during that stuff definitely came up during play, and it was a bit of a wake-up call for me, actually, while writing a lot of these adventures. Just remembering that, I think that the adventure should go this way, but my players may not necessarily, so you also have to write ways to sort of accommodate that, and, writing adventures for an audience, a general audience like these Vitaoth adventures are, is very different than how I was writing for my home game.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, unpack that for me, because
Yeah.
this is the meat of the matter for me. It's the notion
Yeah.
that you do have to contend with a little bit of, I won't say ego, but you know what I mean. Like you've got
Mhm.
to kind of give up some of your darlings to
Yep.
suit a general audience. But yeah, yeah, go on.
Um, making games for my fantasy age game is was very different because I had the access to the character sheets that all of those players were using, so
Yeah.
I knew what those players were capable of, and I could design challenges that were bespoke. Um,
Yeah. Right.
I
Right.
could write adventures that tied into their backstories that would have touched upon their mythic flaws, so to speak. But with a general audience adventure like this, you can't really do that. You can, you can write some through lines and some you can add some themes and you can add maybe some recurring characters and
Right. Right.
but the adventure and this is something that was also darling I had to kill I think at least a couple of times while writing some of these is that um I like making these NPCs. I like making these folks who've got stories that they want to tell and like stuff
Yeah.
that's going on in the background, but um not all players and some players will find it fun to like find out what their companions are doing, their non-player companions are doing, but most players don't, unfortunately. They want this story is supposed to be about them.
Right, and
So
then
you
when if
have
they
so
do show an interest, it's always in the bartender that didn't get the backstory, it's,
that guy that it's always that one guy, and then I have to go get at my name generators, and uh,
right, on the fly and do your thing.
I just
Uh,
know that all of my session prep was for nothing once one of the players asks, "What's this person's name?" Like, "Oh,
oh,
no."
no. So here's a question for you as it relates to so we've
Mhm,
we've talked about developing for the player and kind of and understanding that too much of an impression of your own sort of, "This is what I enjoy,"
mhm.
might be, limiting to people who are different than you. What do you think about developing for the GM?
I mean, I've got a couple of setting books in here that were written with GMs in mind,
Yeah.
and they are mostly at least I usually end up writing them sort of as like, here's a bucket full of ideas. Um, reach your hand in there, stir it up a little bit, pull it out, see what you get. I hope you like it. Um, I think one of my more recent ones is oh goodness, I think it was Denizen, I think it was People, um, and Mortal Foes. I bet if you scroll down
I was just
one
ready to
space, yep, that guy with the golden armor there, that's him.
there we go. Right,
Visitor's
okay.
Guide number 3, Factions and Mortal Foes. That one was written um, to sort of add a lot of people. This is the book that I wrote to add that I wrote 100 NPCs for, and
Oh, now how
let's
long
see,
did
it
that
was
take you?
well, I actually broke it down a little. I saved myself a bit of time by well, I saved myself a bit of time, and then I had to actually double back on it because, but I'll get to that. I actually made 20 NPCs, and I made each of those 20 NPCs in all 5 threat levels, so that there is an assassin NPC, but there's an assassin for novice for what's it minor threat, moderate threat, major threat, dire threat, and legendary threat, so that you
Mm,
can get a little bit more out of that same archetype, but at higher levels of play if you need it.
I love that because that is definitely taking care of the GM, like, making sure that they've
Mhm,
got that span to kind of meet whatever challenge. Uh, do you find yourself developing more like, so for instance, we were taking a look, at, I'm just gonna share this real quick, at
mhm.
Jonesy's, Jonesy, this is the last bus leaving Arkham. The other was the hotels, and
Yes.
that to me, like being able to, Jonesy provided a little background on the history of roadside motels and that kind of
Mhm.
that's a whole thing, a whole kind of even
Very nice.
an aesthetic and all that stuff. And
Mm,
it struck me as such a fantastic resource for GMs. When you're thinking about developing for your developing GM tools for your stuff, it's a little different in that, like, do you have settings, you don't really do like the
mhm.
here's your village, or here's your the castle or the like that kind of stuff. How do you build that stuff into your and also the other question is, and when you're talking about the resources that you build for GMs, is do you find yourself working or creating more for the GM, or do you focus more on the player?
Um, Yeah, for let's see, the set adventures, the Vitaoth adventures that are numbered with an S are setting books. Those
Yeah.
are more GM focused, although at least like um that third one, Factions and Mortal Foes does have some stuff that player characters can use. Um Specifically, I think there are like talent ranks that players can get access to if they join some of the organizations that are listed in the book.
Oh, nice.
uh, that if they hit certain ranks in the organization, they gain additional benefits by being a member of that organization. Um, I think it was when it was still first edition, I wrote out full on honorifics that had whole mechanics attached to it. And but when second edition came around and honorifics became a lot simpler, I
Yeah.
decided to instead go with the organization basically gives you additional training and you earn additional talent ranks by being in the organization and being particularly instrumental to them. They get you a little extra training.
You
Uh,
have such a talent for a turn of phrase or there's some I love this. Like, what does this is so great.
yeah,
Outwit the effulgent inquisitor?
the Effulgent Inquisitors.
Yeah, so what does effulgent mean?
Effulgent, I believe, is just a really fancy way of saying that it's bright. That there's a lot of
I
light
see.
involved.
Okay, got you.
Um, they are Inquisitors who use the element of light and well,
I
yeah, the
like
powers of law, light, and malice, and Eulamenicine, and they're some of my favorite villains in this game.
I was gonna ask you how to say that. You said Eulamenicine.
Eulamenicine. I did a
Nice.
lot of work with angel name generators when I
Ah,
was
sure.
building that part of the world. So I wanted it to sound very angelic. But then, of
It
course,
does, it definitely does. I was just gonna say
yeah.
it feels like, it has that
hmm
angelic vibe to it for sure.
I stole, I think, a couple of names of maybe real angels for titles for some of the leaders of that organization that you can find in that book.
Nice.
And I think I include they're one of the bigger organizations. Only or there are organizations that in that book that are generic, that are not meant that you can add more to yourself. So there's like one for like bandit camp, but then there's like a bigger one for like bandit compound or something.
Got
Uh,
you. Okay, great. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that don't really have a lot of that have like abilities and they have the stats worked out for you, but they don't have a lot of but they can, be dropped into pretty much any fantasy age game. And then the latter half of that chapter is all we love some archaic words from the dustbins of disuse.
I'm
Ooh,
just gonna say absolutely, yeah.
that's a band name right there. Or no,
It
that's an
really
album
is,
name.
it really is. Hey, I did
That's an
wanna
album
ask you
name.
a quick. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did wanna ask you a quick question. What kinda
Mhm.
arts and crafts do they have at Bandit Camp?
At Bandit Camp, they have let's see, they've got ooh, the arts and crafts, disassembling wagon wheels. They've
Oh, sure.
got pin the tail on the guards.
I like that. I like that. Garrote,
Uh,
I think garroting is a
oh
good
yeah,
one.
garrots.
Yeah.
Make your own garrots at home.
Nice, nice. That's great.
Stuff
Your
like
kids
that.
come back just all ready.
Oh
They're
yeah.
tooled up and ready to, be a bandit. I like it.
hmm
Um,
Let's
okay, and
see.
so
I do have a couple of setting books that are going to be more player focused. I think my
okay.
next one actually is going to be almost entirely player focused. I believe I'm going to call it Denizens, and it's supposed to be about the people, like the ancestries that you can play as.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Okay.
and I don't know if I might sneak in new talents and specializations that I wrote for the setting. Um,
Nice. Okay, and
yeah.
so do you have disparate pieces of stuff that you're like, "Oh, I need to include that in something that I'm creating in the future," and then you kinda find a way to congeal that into one solid, sort of release? Like, how does that work?
Oh yeah. That one with the big root man on the front of it. Yeah. Woes of the Wild was. I was going planning on making one very large sort of bestiary of creatures from Vitaoth. and
Hmm.
I decided that again it was getting very big and it was going to be a bit cumbersome and it was getting hard to work with in a word processor. So I decided to cut it down. And this book is very specifically about creatures that you will find in the wilderness. And one of the thing I was very excited to get into this book is natural hazards.
Oh yeah,
Vitaoth,
talk to me about that a
yeah,
bit. Yeah,
Vitaoth is very heavily focused on the power of nature, and if you had to like look at the sort of spread of D&D classes on Vitaoth,
yeah,
classes like Druid would be a very heavy focus. Um, because I built a lot of the world based around how Fantasy Age's magic system worked, and there were a
yeah,
lot of elemental arcana, and I like a good elemental system, and I like Pokemon, and
yeah. Right. Yeah.
you might get to play Pokemon sort of when Denizens comes out. Um, I have there's a specific ancestry that's very mechanically inspired by Blue Rose's Raiden, and
Nice.
it's going. They're called the Infused. They are
Okay.
uh, animals who have been infused with the power of the elements that has given them full sapience and the ability to speak.
No, is this as a
And
result of a sort of humanity created a thing and they get
uh,
a sip of it and they turn into something, or do they get is it a boon from the gods, or like how does that work?
I think that it has that there's room for both of those. Although I think that the vast majority of them, it just kind of happens. Just one, just
Ah,
elemental, just the power of nature and the heartbeat of it. Just sort of it waxes and it wanes. And sometimes when it waxes, um, some animals are just born in a different color. They've got elemental powers and they can speak, and they decide to become. Hey, Duke. They
hey,
decided to
Duke,
some of them decide to become sort of stewards of their cousins, as they refer to them, like the family that
the non sort of
understands them but necessarily can't speak and isn't fully sentient.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I did steal a lot about Raiden for
Well, they're
this,
so
but
brilliant. Yeah, the way that they're
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wanted to give this more of a Pokemon feel, and
I got it. Okay,
so
very
yeah.
interesting. Very interesting.
So
Yeah, and hey,
there's
good
talents you
good
can
good
take that'll get you some elemental powers, and the part of the world that they're focused on is meant to be very evocative of a lot of classical JRPGs like Pokemon,
yeah.
or the Tales of series, or some of the early Final Fantasy games. Uh, and let's see, and the more that I'm thinking about it, going back to one of Tempos's questions, one of the big things I think that separates Blue Rose from Vitaoth is that um, a lot of what inspired me to write Vitaoth was also Pathfinder's setting of Galarian.
Right.
And one of the things I really like that I think is very fun is that it's a high fantasy world, but crossing country borders, you can cross into an entirely different genres. Um, two of my favorite regions in the inner sea setting of the Lost Omens campaign is Ustalav, which was once the seat of the Lich King, and for like 800 years, this Lich King Tarbafon ruled over it, and his dark touch and dark designs have never really let go of Ustalav. So now it is a gothic high fantasy. Now is a gothic fantasy, high fantasy part of the world. Um,
Jonesy says all actions are turn based.
but if you go just a little bit over to the east, you go to my favorite. If you just cross one border in that setting, you go to my favorite place, which I usually describe as Conan the Barbarian got hit by a spaceship. Um,
Okay, okay.
It is big flat badlands that is populated by nomadic warriors. And about 4,000 years ago, a massive spaceship caravan crashed out of the sky, and we've been dealing with the fallout of that ever since. Sometimes, literally.
Very interesting. Where's that at on the
So
map?
that's well, sorry, that's in my that's not in my setting. I
Ah,
wish it was.
right.
But
Okay. Gotcha,
I
gotcha.
wanted to evoke a little bit of that fun, like you
Oh, I
could
get it.
have maybe like Like I think on that map, if you go to Gallimare on the east on the west side of it, there that little spot says Gallimare, right above Winsless. Uh,
Let me. Yeah, here we go.
Sorry,
Right here.
it's kind of
Yes.
small. Yeah, Gallimare has it's the ancestral home of the gnomes, and the gnomes in Vitaeoth are very technologically savvy.
Oh,
Uh, their society is trying to remove their dependence upon magic. So
okay.
so they're getting into a lot of well, maybe there's a term for it, but I use the term electropunk. Um,
Oh, I like that.
it's like steampunk, but with a lot more exposed copper wiring.
Okay, sure.
Um, and a bit of corporate espionage because I took a lot of Final Fantasy VII out of it. There is a mega corporation called Storm Incorporated that handles
Nice.
and technology, and they've got a stranglehold on everything, sort of like the Shinra company from Final Fantasy VII, where the big villain is sort of a mega corporation that also its CEO is a grand spirit of lightning. There is like a full elemental lord that runs this company.
I see. Kind of masquerading as a normal person, or just straight up like,
It is very well known
yeah.
that Zerfinigan, I think it's Inspiration Strike. I think his epithet. Uh, am I transmitting a lot of
I'm
static?
hearing you pretty clearly, but,
Okay,
yeah, sorry that folks are having a hard time
yeah,
hearing.
gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
I will try to enunciate, but
Well, I'm
if
getting a
you
little bit of yeah, yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
But if you go just sort north of Gallimere and head into the region of Faneloft, that is an extremely high magic setting, where they have where supposedly in the ancient times, powerful air spirits danced across the earth, throwing the earth into the sky, and the earth just never came down. So there's a lot of floating islands,
Right.
uh, and a lot of people and societies and creatures that have adapted to having a lot of places where elevation changes very quickly. So there's a lot of flight happening.
Oh,
It's
sure,
very
okay.
yeah, it's very air focused. There's a lot of airships flying around. There's floating cities. There's island chains with their own contained ecosystems. Um, oh, good. I'm glad to hear.
Great.
Uh,
Thanks,
But
Michael.
yeah, yeah. So if you had somebody from Faneloft walking around with someone from Gallimere, it's very different. And I personally really enjoy, um, what's the word? Sort of genre bashing, having
Yeah,
two characters from very different genres squint at each other and try to make sense of like one of them is coming in with a record player, and the other one has an elemental companion floating around their shoulder, and they're
right.
both just not trusting each other at all.
Right, right. Who is this Joker? Right, I love that.
Who is this sassy lost child?
Right, right. That's awesome, and I love as well I can see the JRPG influence and
Yep.
sort of
The
the
more you
epic
get
sense.
in, the more you'll see it.
That's right. I love that. So one of the questions that Michael asked this earlier was kind of
Mhm.
funny because right as you started to talk about the bestiary,
Yeah.
he asked the question of is it hard to get lost in, or do you ever get into the weeds with these bits and pieces, the geography, the weather, the
Mm.
naturalism, and all of that? Like,
Um,
do you give yourself a budget?
there sometimes has to be a budget.
Yeah.
As I have that's actually one of the design things that I've come across, especially when making stuff like this, is it has to be done at some point. I
Right.
can keep adding stuff and I can keep making it bigger, but that's more stuff to edit. That's more stuff to have other people look at for me. That's more stuff to maybe either make some art of my own or buy some stock art to fill out the pages. It has to be done at some point, which is why a lot of my books have ended up. I was going to have I was going to have 4 books originally. My plan was I was going to have my original plan was I was gonna have one massive book that was just, "You buy this book, you get everything."
Right.
Um, that got too much. So I broke it down into four. I was going to do destinations, which I was going to basically tell you what's on the map. And if you go here, what might you see? I was going to have denizens, where I give you the ancestries that you can play as. I was going to give you disciplines, which tells you like the specializations and the talents you can take. And then I was going to do dangers, which was going to be a bestiary. Um, but so far, pretty much all of those things have, I've always got ideas, and but trying to make sure that I actually release something, I usually try and maybe like with Woes of the Wild, all of those creatures were going to go into my bestiary, but I wanted to get something out, so I figured I could focus on the natural world, and which is a big focus on Vitaoth. Um, Perhaps as compared to Blue Rose. Well, Blue Rose definitely focuses very heavily on the power of nature as well, um, and it's definitely got a place for it. I would say that that the power of nature is a bit more central to Vitaoth's storytelling. And let's see, uh, where was I going with this?
We were talking about just sort of the getting into the weeds, right? And sort of reining it back and,
So
and employing that budget.
everything, it has to be done, and, so sometimes I just and that's enough detail, and
Yeah.
I usually actually find that, getting into the weeds is something I maybe could do. I don't usually do it because I think I've come around, especially with, the gaming groups that I've had, I've come
Mhm.
around to the thought that I could figure out what the ecologies are and
Yeah.
what food is available and what the trade routes look like. And I could figure out who is in government, what does the government provide. Players don't usually care.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
my event, the title of Vitaoth Adventures says elemental fantasy action on it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what they came for. They
Right.
did not come here to discuss trade routes. They did not come here to discuss traditional foods.
The
Um,
encyclopedia,
as
the
exactly
payoff. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
as fun as that can be, and as much flavor as that can add, I usually find it much more useful that you can sprinkle that stuff in for the folks who do want it, because most people want to come in, they want to pick up a sword, they want to do some magic, they want to have some fun adventures. And you know what? That's fun. I want to do that too.
I like that a lot, and it's actually a perfect place for me to say, "We have a couple minutes left before the show's over."
Hey, perfect.
And we've only, I mean, for me, well, here's something that so you'll be popping in and hanging out with us, for
Mhm,
an extended period of time. Was really excited about that and, helping kinda make
mhm.
helping make Thursday an actual program that people wanna hang out and listen to. And I appreciate that.
I like
Of
listening to it.
course, the Duke is gonna, join us as well, as we kind of continue to develop this idea. I'm particularly interested, and this is just sort of a look to the future, as for when you come to the pragmatism of
Mhm,
what you're building as tools for GMs, I can't help but feel, and I don't know. See, I'm debating with myself. Am I thinking of all of these tools because I like that process and it feels good and it's fun? Do they
mhm,
really need it? It relates to sort of what you're talking about as well. Like less can be more, and it's a question of how important is this to the storytelling elements, and so that is definitely something that I'm working with and want to for us to kind of unpack a little bit. um
mhm.
Speak of the devil, can we fit you both on there? Oh no, Duke's so tiny.
He's so little.
Hey, I'm
Make him
just
bigger.
an
There
itty
you
bitty
go.
There
Duke.
he is.
Hey,
Hey,
hi.
Duke,
How's it?
thank you for popping
Hello.
in. You've been listening to some of the conversation that we've had. I'm inspired by it, and it also inspires more questions that I'm going to save for next Thursday, which is that's
Yay.
yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But and thank you, Ren, so much for kind of letting me pick through your
Yes.
brain on this. I know it can be, I ask such big questions, or sort of catch off guard, and you're like, what, and you are able to
You
really
know,
get in there and answer the question.
I did want to say that to maybe kind of bring it back to the thing about the dragon map that we were that
Yes,
this
that.
thing that we started, and then you watched me and Duke start running off into the hills and like, hey guys. Um, part of my actually probably because it's part of my process that having a battle map is fun, and
Yeah.
I'm very guilty of loving collecting maps. I like having maps.
Yes, yes, same.
I subscribe to Seipeku's Patreon, and incidentally, if you want some kaiju maps, they have a couple. Um,
Ooh, yeah, yeah, we should take
there's
a
one
look.
about a beach. There's one about a beached kraken that is lying on the ground, and its mouth is hanging open for you to walk right inside of.
Well,
Um,
well, well, we may wanna
they've
take a
got one
look.
where you can fight on the back of a flying dragon.
Right.
Um, there's a wizard prison, and one of the levels of the wizard prison is a maze that looks an awful lot like you're walking into something's mouth. Um,
Nice, yeah.
you know,
It definitely is
but
the maw being the entrance to the
mhm,
dungeon and that kind of stuff is definitely it's a
yeah.
well-worn trope. Um,
But, I
yeah,
think one of the things what helps me personally is if I build sort of this whole u world about, a celestial dragon that is, flying through the stars, carrying all these people with it. Um, yeah, Devious knows what we're talking about. They do such good work. Um, but, it helps me make, sort of like a fuller context. Um,
yeah.
having battle maps, I think, can be very fun. Um, but I usually find that battle maps are only as good as the context that you drop them into. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
and
if
for
we've
me
got yeah, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was just gonna say for me, the genesis of wanting to do that was to just play around a bit. It really, at that
Mhm,
point, was more of an exercise in the methodology and the experience of creating without necessarily thinking that it would be interesting to anybody but people who are, watching third stage is kind of where I was
mhm,
coming from with that. But,
I hear you.
but I like where we go with it, and so I'm open to sort of how we move forward. But, I think the three of us ought to sit down and just sort of say, what do we think? How do we want to retool this? Is there an element of this that we want to, as a way of inspiring other people who are in the same place that I'm in, which is I want to do some creating so bad, but I also would like to skip some of the oh my god, this is garbage steps of the process, especially doing it live on a live stream. But Tempo says I feel so odd. Hopefully in a good way, because we're all odd here. The
Very.
very, very much so. The other thing I was going to mention, let's take one more question, and I think it's a good one. And it's not one that we have to answer fully and completely, and the both of you can kind of share your thoughts on this, but it's do you have a daily routine to
Mm,
actually get stuff done? And you did talk a bit about, Ren, that like life is changing for you, the time that maybe
yeah.
would be developed or devoted to individual creation time is a little less. But how do you do it?
Well, I would like to say that I've maybe got some accountability buddies. Most of the folks who I would take as accountability buddies are also folks who have already got other TTRPG jobs that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've got a couple of very good friends who are also freelancers, who are getting their work done because they're being paid to do it. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, the paycheck definitely gives you a different time, makes the timetable very different.
Yeah.
Um,
Right,
for
right.
writing it for yourself, it's different. Um, there is a certain discipline that you kind of have to find in it, or what I think end up finding much more helpful for myself is giving myself some limits. Uh, because I think a lot of creativity can come out trying to color inside some lines.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you
If
can
you've
get very
only
creative
got
about how you
so
fill
many
stuff.
words if you've
Right.
only got so many words, you've only got so many chapters that you wanna do, if you have a specific number of stat blocks that you wanna make, then you try to cram as much as you can into those things, without it feeling too overwhelming, and I think that what comes out is a bit shinier than uh, knuckling down, "I'm going to make 1,000 stat blocks," and
Right,
by the
right,
time
right.
you get to stat block number 300, like, "Man, maybe I could have focused this a little more."
Yeah, and I think too that limiting the palette makes you focus on the most important elements of what you're trying
Yeah.
to communicate. And that's something that I think we might want to revisit when we talk offline about the map, the battle map, which says really literally started as let's do a battle map, and then it became a beautiful big thing. And so maybe contracting that a bit might help us sort of get fundamental. But that being
I
said,
got some
yeah,
ideas for battle maps. I
okay, I
got some
love that.
monsters. I got some
Hey,
hazards that we could add.
ooh, I like that.
Uh,
Nice.
Yeah,
some maybe wells of power was something I had in mind. Stealing from
Wells
threefold.
power, sure, absolutely, yeah, awesome. And and I think I want to speak just real quick to the pragmatic sort of accountability buddies is the way to do it. And one of the things that every Tuesday I run I've been doing this for 3 years. It is the Patreon creator. So it's an official program that Patreon started, which is really rooted in accountability clubs, and they call them A clubs.
Mm.
And so I've been facilitating that group for 3 years, and it is amazing to be able to sit down and talk to people who you're already at the shorthand part of the experience. They understand the industry, they understand the space, and they're all doing, even though they're disparate creators. It's like we've got somebody who's does fantasy parody. We've got somebody else with songs, like they're a bard, and we've got somebody else who does maps, and we've got somebody else who creates paper minis, and then everybody in between, to sit down and really say, I'm running into this problem, and everybody can kind of go, and they can either tell you how they got around it or how they would get around it if they were to experience it. And it is as part of that program on Wednesdays, there's a kind of a shadowing opportunity where you get in and you say, I've got this thing I need to do, and you spend 2 hours. You share what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then you go to work on it for a couple hours. Then you come back and check in, or there's a check in the middle, and at the end to kind of talk about your progress. Nothing better to kind of sweep out the cobwebs of where am I going and how many. I'm on my fourth variation of a pig, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah,
Okay.
doubling down on that. And then do you have a Patreon, friend?
I did. I had one for the podcast.
Yeah,
And we're not running the podcast right now, so the Patreon is down. It still exists. I could turn it back on, maybe after reconfiguring it, but right now I do not have a Patreon.
yeah,
Um,
and
I
I do.
saw Jonesy had a good answer. They just said I set time blocks every week. That's
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's
solid.
that's the discipline part that I lack, because I set them as well, but then my time blocks take on a life of their own, and I find I'm like, why am I sitting here staring out the window for 5 hours? I will say this as well. You've inspired me that I wonder if we shouldn't explore the idea of an accountability kind of club of folks who are working in the Age Creators Alliance, just to sort of get together and say,
Mm,
here's what we're doing, so we're running into, these are the problems we're having, and apply that to many different elements of creating in the Green Ronin universe. Food
okay.
for thought, food for thought. But
Food
we
for
are
thought. I
now,
like that.
we were a little late starting by 3 minutes, and some people said that we were early. I saw that, Devious. We are early by being late for 3 minutes is wonderful.
Rude.
Yeah, it's so rude. But do want to talk, Duke. So you have had you had a late night, didn't you?
I did have a late night
You
doing
did.
things with you and Devious.
Friends, we got together, we were in there for 4 hours. The time just flew by the way. It wasn't like, but
Yeah,
towards the end, we were all getting a little, I think I actually fell asleep at one point.
yeah. I was getting loopy too. I mean, at the end, I think it was like midnight for you, and it was like
8 in the
uh,
morning.
yeah, it was past 8 in the morning for me, and
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's also way above my pay grade.
Well, but here's the thing. We sat down and we got a lot done. Do you want to talk a bit about it?
Yeah, we basically went over the things that needed to be adjusted inside the grad
Yeah.
to have some channels be more precise in how they are presenting, how we are managing the whole thing to make more sense, to be the official Green Ronin front end, so to say. Then we're trying some things to mirror a little bit from the atomic think tank, so that people who are coming from the grad to the tank recognize certain things, and vice versa, so that things get a little bit easier to handle. Which, I mean, for the most part, I think we got a decent thing in.
And it's fantastic. Yeah, you are, of course, downplaying it, but we spent 4 hours, and we really, it's difficult because we're all kind of thinking in different schemas. Thank you, Reyn. And we're kind of looking at it from different places, trying to identify that elephant and holding different parts of the elephant, and trying to say, I don't know what this is. It's a tree. It's a snake. It's a weird butthole, whatever that it might, whatever it might be. But the process and getting to a space, so folks, you basically, and everyone's aware, I'm certain, that the grad is now part of the official Green Ronin family of platforms, and very excited about that. Which scene was it? Was it this one? No, it wasn't that. It was this one. Yeah. And so essentially it's the Green Ronin Atomic Assembly Discord, which is fun. So it's still the grad, but we spent some time really making sure that the space was usable and that it reflected some of the needs and the stuff. I mean, it's been usable. I'm not saying that it wasn't usable, but that there's parity between what's going on in the tank and the channels in the Discord, and there's more to come. I just wanted to just sort of say, my friend, you killed it last night. It was really a wonderful experience to kind of go through that process and come through and really have done some real work, so folks can actually see the results of that. And now remember, we were in there for 4 hours, so if you see something real weird, that might be the case. But by and large, it was a pretty enjoyable and rewarding experience.
Definitely. I mean, we had a lot of back and forth, and obviously, like, different opinions on certain things. But that's how these things work. You throw it all on the wall and see what sticks. And yeah, it's great. I mean, we rearranged a couple things already. Other things will be changing in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
There will be certain customer service areas for people to engage in, who are looking for information from Green Ronin about things, not just about the grad, but actually like having ordered a thing and needing help.
Yeah, that's right.
So that will be pretty cool. There will be certain integrations into Discord and the Atomic Think Tank to have a little bit of cross-pollination where it's possible. That will be pretty cool. Definitely way. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say a closer connection to the regular published sort of blogs and things will pop up.
Exactly. Yeah, if there are news, there will be the news that will pop up on the Green Ronin website will also be relayed into the grad, so people who are mainly on the grad will be in the know of what's going on in the greater Green Ronin world without having to check a website, which is great because.
It's great. I mean, because it's a tighter connection, and it's a direct, here's the fire hose of Green Ronin detail and information more than you'd ever hoped. But the thing I'm really excited about is the event space.
Yes, the event space will be great. Yeah. We already littered the place with a couple voice channels that are there because we obviously want people to not just tipple type. We also want people to actually talk to each other, and we want people to play with each other, and we want people to be able to attend organized events, play areas where people can have their play sessions on the grad, actual areas where Green Ronin organized little chats are happening where one of the devs is being there to be questioned, so to say, fireside chats, all of that kind of stuff.
And so here's the thing. So we've done this, the 4 hours worth of, blood, sweat, and tears. And now it's your turn, friends. We want you to head over to the grad. We want you to check it out share any details or information. You see Ren's pointing at you immediately in your face, because we need your feedback. And so if there's something that you would like, or maybe you saw something on another server that you're like, gosh, I really wish that was here, this is the time to let us know. Because pretty soon the thing's gonna be baked, and it's gonna be a beautiful big cake. And if you haven't added your ingredient, you could be missing it. It could just fall flat and be, but
oh no.
yeah. So you'll find the link to the grad in the chat, dropped by Devious. Thank you very much, my friend. And listen, we are done. It feels like this has been 4 hours as well. But this is Ren. Thank you so much for hanging in, and Duke, thank you so much for popping in. Yes. I really do appreciate it, and I think that we will call it. I'm gonna let you guys go, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's coming up. So feel free to pop away. But we're gonna talk real quick about what's going on in the Atomic Think Tank, specifically today. In maybe like 45 minutes or so, it's getting tanked with Troy. And basically what it means is that you get to hang out office hours with me. And what we're going to do is go with the flow. There's so much discussion that happens. We really cover we run the gamut. But it is the place to, essentially, it is office hours. If there's maybe I've forgotten something, which is often the case, pop in, say, hey, it's a Zoom meeting, and there's a bit of there's a bit of sort of like, let's if you brought an issue to discuss, let's discuss it. If you are, maybe you got a great idea, maybe you got a new stream, maybe you just want to come and hang out with some of the coolest nerds in the TTRPG space. It's a lot of fun, very dynamic, and everybody gets a chance to talk. So you are welcome to join. And you can also just join and lurk a bit if you like. You can do that. I may say, why are you here? Because I'll be very curious. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. All you have to do is go to atomicthinktank.com, check out the events. You will see Get Tanked with Troy. There's a link. You will kick open the Zoom and you can join us. You don't have to if you don't want your camera on, you don't have to do that either. But we would sure love to have you. And let's talk a bit about the July calendar. This is getting better and better. Pretty soon, you're going to also see a lot of our actual plays and things on a supplementary calendar called Streams We Love. For now, you can kind of check out what we've got cooking. Of course, today is the 3rd, and you've got Thursday, which you just experienced, and then Tanked with me at 5. And then Mumemo on Mondays, generally every Monday. But if you look over here, see that big purple star? We've got an actual play. It's a Mutants and Masterminds actual play, and it's going to be a blast. Did I have that on the wrong day? I may. Let me, I might need to unpack this a little bit. Okay, so that'll happen. And we've got other big plans. You will soon see a lot of great activities and stuff for people who are keen on the adventure game engine and the many games that it powers. So stay tuned for all of that info and detail. But for now, I think we're pretty much ready to call it a day. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening. I want to thank chat for all your great conversations. Oh, thank you, Devious. Dropped a link to Get Tanked with Troy, which will only work for today. So if you're listening to this on demand, you missed it. But join us next Thursday. And thanks again. Please everybody have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you later.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Oh, you scared the living light out of me. All right. Miss you. Kiss you. Bye.